Go ahead. Good morning again, and welcome everyone to today's CPC meeting. Today is December 6, 2023. The Seattle Community Police Commission acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Duwamish people, past and present. And it's with humility that we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors and highly esteems these tribes. We hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationships with urban Native people and all Coast Salish tribes. I will take attendance. Commissioner Lars Erickson.
Good morning, here.
Good morning. Commissioner Philip Sanchez. And Commissioner Adrian Levitt has an excused absence. Commissioner Suzette Dickerson. Commissioner Lynn Wilson.
Good morning, President.
Good morning. Commissioner Raven Nicole Tyler.
Good morning, I'm here. I'll be on camera soon.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mary Ruffin. Commissioner Reverend Harriet Walden.
Present.
Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Joel Merkel.
Morning, President.
Good morning. Commissioner Lejaya Washington. Commissioner Officer Mark Mullins.
Officer Mark Mullins is here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And Commissioner Lieutenant Tony Gadke.
Good morning, everyone. Present.
Good morning. Commissioner Jeremy Wood. Commissioner Tasha Johnson. And Commissioner, good morning. And Commissioner Erica Newman. And I am here, Commissioner Patricia Hunter. So we do have quorum. In your packet of information that you received the agenda for today. I would entertain a motion to receive the agenda.
I'll step away from the chair to receive the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we receive the agenda as presented to us. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have an agenda. We also received the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, I'll receive a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to receive the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as distributed to us. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay? Any abstentions? Great. Then we have approved minutes from our last meeting as well. Co-chair updates. I will start off, and my other co-chairs may have something to share as well. I'm just incredibly excited that the CPC has a permanent executive director. It's been a journey every step of the way, challenges from within and some from without. This is one major step in strengthening the CPC. And the next step is to fulfill some vacant positions, including hiring a deputy that will increase our stability and our deliverables. The CPC will always have our detractors, but these co-chairs are committed to following the ordinance and being a voice for the varied communities in Seattle when it comes to constitutional policing and police accountability. So congratulations, Dr. Ellis. You are the executive director of the CPC for such a time as this. Thank you. Other co-chairs?
Yes, thank you. I would like to add that, all three co-chairs were at Dr. Ellis's confirmation hearing in the Public Safety Human Services Subcommittee last week, and also for her full council confirmation vote yesterday. And, sorry, I'll go on camera, why not? And I just want to note, not only did Dr. Ellis provide some very strong comments about the role of the CPC in the accountability system in Seattle, the uniqueness of our system and our focus on policy informed by community engagement, and using or abiding by the ordinance as our North Star. There was some very strong comments from council members as well, complimenting Dr. Ellis on her fidelity to the ordinance and policy development, her skills and background in those areas, public administration, policy development. And I was just very encouraged by some of the council members' comments with respect to those key areas of our mission and Dr. Ellis's work. So I'm looking forward to the year ahead. I think, now that we have a permanent ED and we have some other really important positions to fill, most notably, one of the things noted by council was that through our work this year, we were able to include a new FTE in our agency, a deputy director, something that OIG and OPA have had the whole time. And that's really going to expand our ability to fulfill our mission. So I'm really looking forward to the year ahead. I'm grateful Kali has stepped up to serve and that the council approved her very strongly. So thank you and congratulations.
And I just like to echo that and, just think about having a full staff, getting another policy director, and that's, and then, I'm working in the community. And I think what I'm most happy about is that your ability to absolutely know what the ordinance say. I mean, because we haven't had anyone that was really could focus on the ordinance, that we work together to, to ensure that the CPC did not go away after the end of the consent decree. Otherwise, we would be this would be dissolved. And by working on 2017 ordinance and then trying to get set up in 2018 and setting up a new agency in Seattle, I don't think that there's a lot of experience and a lot of help setting up a new agency. So there's a lot of things that we didn't know. I mean, and we're still learning about stuff because they don't set up that many new agencies, and I'm hoping that all the rest of them won't have as much difficulty we've had getting settled. But just someone who knows the ordinance. I mean, it took a lot of work for the ordinance. We know that it's still not fully implemented, but knowing the ordinance and policy, and also how community engagement is supposed to, to be able to, with all these emergent issues. I think it was something in the paper today about culture and and SPOG. Excuse me, and so we have a lot of things to go forward on, and it's been it's been a challenge to keep going, and you're skilled around the budget and to make sure that fiduciary responsibility. We have a fiduciary responsibility with the budget, and you've been able to look at that and be able to work on that and get all what's all necessary to make sure that that this agency is financially sound and that we're doing right with the public money. So I really appreciate that you going forward, and I'm glad that you got appointed, and I hope your mother got to see it on the television.
Yes, she did.
I mean, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I say that as the longest person been here since 2013. Brought the DOJ to town, worked on that, so it's like just going all the way through this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, co-chairs. It's been almost a year since we've had an executive director update. We've had interim executive updates. So I'm just really excited that today we have an executive director.
I have a couple more quick.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
A couple things I just wanted to mention from the co-chairs. Here we are, early December. We're near the end of the year, and now we are kind of on the way, I think, to becoming a more robust organization with Dr. Ellis being confirmed, and we have some pretty important leadership roles that are soon to be filled between now that Dr. Ellis is the permanent ED. our agency is now able to hire a policy director, because that's the position Dr. Ellis was originally hired for. So hiring a policy director will be hugely helpful. We're in the process of hiring a communications director. We're also in the process, as I mentioned a minute ago, we now have a deputy director position. We've begun the process of hiring a deputy director. So all of those things combined, with the end of the year, one thing I wanted to just share with everyone and ask for everyone is that we want to have an inclusive process for developing policy priorities for 2024. As everyone knows, there's been a number of really important, significant policies that the commission has worked on and discussed this year, most notably SPD culture. We've had some meetings on that. We've addressed issues related to the SPD emergency response policy, how an officer is to drive during an emergency response. We've addressed issues related to the policy of what can be displayed in an SPD facility, but other policies that are long-term policies that the commission has always worked on, including contracts with SPOC, issues with dispatch, consent decree ending. And then we also have all the work group work, complaint and appeals, behavioral health, police practices, community engagement, all of those things. And so what I'm asking each commissioner to do is to go back to your communities that you engage with on a regular basis and have those discussions about what are the policy priorities that the CPC should use its limited resources on. Particularly time. Time is the one resource we can't create. So how should we use our time, and what should be the top policy priorities for the commission based on input you're getting from the community in your communities? And the hope is that we can have that type of discussion at the next meeting, December 20th, or possibly even in early January. So that's my ask. Please go back to your communities, engage with them, and I just read off a list of things that we've been working on that the co-chairs believe we need to continue working on, but we also want to hear from each commissioner and to have kind of a robust commissioner discussion on that. So that's my ask. Please go back and do that. And then the final thing I wanted to mention in the co-chair update is in Judge Robart's order from earlier this fall, partially ending the consent decree, but continuing it in other two key areas, particularly with respect to accountability and use of force and crowd control. And I'm reading from the order right now on page 7, paragraph 5. It says, SPD shall provide a report to the court no later than December 15, 2023 on the status of the implementation of RCW 10.114.011 and RCW 43.102.020 regarding investigations of the use of deadly force. The report shall include an explanation of how the legislation affects SPD's force investigation team. What does that mean, and why is that important? Those RCWs are basically the RCWs that created the statewide Office of Independent Investigations, headed by Judge Roger Rogoff. And that's really important because there's a carve out in state law that says that SPD is not under their jurisdiction and can continue to investigate their own instances of use of force, use of deadly force under the force investigation team, which is essentially a creature of the consent decree. And the state law says that if you're under a consent decree, if a police agency is under a consent decree, then you're not under this independent office. Well, Judge Robart is basically saying, well, at some point, the consent decree is going to be over and you will, SPD, be under that independent office. And he is asking SPD to create a report on what they're doing to get ready for that, to transition for that, and how it's going to impact the force investigation team. Essentially, maybe make it go away because it's not going to provide the primary function of the investigation. And so I just want to draw everyone's attention to that because that's really important to the CPC. We've been a strong supporter of the Office of Independent Investigation. And it's really important that uses of force such as these are independently investigated And so we are very eager to see what the filing from the city is going to be on that. And I just want everyone to pay attention to that, because by the time we meet next on December 20, that December 15 deadline will have come and gone. And so I just want everyone to know that we are paying attention to that as co-chairs. I encourage commissioners to pay attention to it as well. And that's all I have to say about that at the moment. And look forward to discussing that further once we see more information. Thank you for that space. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Our executive director report now.
Great, thank you very much. I have a few items I'd like to cover this morning, but I first want to echo the co-chairs to thank each and every one of you, the commissioners, for the tremendous amount of work you all put into the process of selecting the new executive director. I know that this was diligent work. It took a lot of time. It was over a year to stabilize the Community Police Commission and bring the commission forward to fulfilling its potential as a key oversight partner. So thank you. I also want to thank the staff that's here with us, who've taken on the challenge of stepping up the work of this agency during this critical period of transition. So as you heard yesterday, I took the oath of office at City Council and am now in this position as the permanent executive director. I'm very excited to begin working on the next phase of the CPC, helping you as community representatives fulfill your goals for achieving constitutional policing for the city of Seattle. With the partial end of the consent decree, this is a critical year, and next year is going to be a very critical year for Seattle and the Community Police Commission, and I thank you for your trust in me as we move forward. So today we will not have an update from the Community Engagement Director as she's on leave for now, but we look forward to updates from the Community Engagement team when Director Cross returns. So one thing I mentioned last time, you might have heard it here, but I want to emphasize again, is the important work of building up our staff. I sent along the link in the materials to this meeting yesterday that includes the direct link to the position of the communications director. This is a very, very important position for the CPC to help get our message out and also connect policy with communications. So I would like you to read that closely. It's quite different than it's been in the past, and send it along to anyone that you know that would be interested in stepping up to this challenging role. And as Co-Chair Merkel mentioned, we just put in the hiring request form for the policy director. That usually takes about 3 months total. In a couple weeks, we'll have a job ad, and I would like to encourage, and I'll be asking you directly as commissioners, you to be part of the process. You can be part of the process of hiring this next very critical role by working with the city recruiters to review resumes, to be part of the interview process. And I know that you all have tremendous expertise that I really want to bring in and leverage for the policy director role. And then the deputy position that we were so fortunate to get allocated to us through City Council, this one is going to take a little bit longer. First, because it's a new position, we have to develop, it is called a PDQ, the Position Description Questionnaire, to make sure it fits in with the expectations of the city. And then after that, we will be able to begin this process of recruiting. And again, I'll be tapping all of you again. So I just want to give a super brief update on the budget. We have a lot of presentations today that are very important, but I just wanted to let you know the budget for the city was passed and signed by Mayor Harrell on December 1st. A key item is connected to the presentation from the last meeting. So the care department, Amy Smith, who was here last meeting we had, they were allocated $26.5 million to support the development of the new work they're doing at the care team. I will say myself and Danny Sullivan were at the Crisis Intervention Committee meeting at Seattle Police Department yesterday, and there were a number of people, including Chief Smith, I believe that's her title, and a number of people that are actually mental health professional representatives who are part of the care team or out of the community. And so it's very exciting to see this new branch of public safety stepping up in the city. A couple other short things that were part of the budget. So there was support for SPD and audio gunfire detection technology, as well as CCTV and automated license plate readers. So this is in the SPD budget. Before that gets rolled out, they have to do a couple of analyses, including disparity analyses and technology surveillance analyses before they can roll it out. But this is something that was a priority of the mayor and is now in the budget. This was something that not all of you were here last year, but the Community Police Commission had hosted individuals who are interested in the impact of this technology at our meetings. One of the very last things that came up in the budget as well, I think it was the last amendment they voted on, was adding to the budget of SPD something that is like Trulio. You may remember Mr. Brian Maxey from SPD came and gave a presentation on Trulio. If you recall, Trulio is basically a sentiment analysis technology that will capture the words that officers say on body camera footage and then analyze the sentiment of it. This Seattle Police Department did not renew their contract with Trulio. They're not moving forward with Trulio. However, money was allocated for technology that might be similar. So that's just a very short update on the budget and some of the things that we were following. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to Commissioner Work Group updates, and I'll go ahead and take over facilitating. And I understand Commissioner Levitt is absent today, an excused absence, and that Danny Sullivan, our policy team, has an update on complainants appeals.
Thanks, Joel. Oh, I don't need to unmute. Okay. Is this
Just mute your.
just mute my mic?
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Apparently this is the first time I've spoke in these meetings. Okay, so last week, Dr. Rosenthal, we've been working with Dr. Rosenthal, who has been working on a white paper on complainant appeals research and best practices. And he has a lot of expertise in that area. He played a role in developing the complainant appeals processes in Portland and in Denver. So he's been working on this for a long time, and so he presented his white paper last week at our work group meeting. It was very insightful. I put a lot of the work group's work in perspective. So we have asked him to present his findings at one of the upcoming CPC meetings. It'll likely be in February because he'll be out of the country in January. And then in the meantime, the work group is going to have one last meeting next week to discuss his findings and try to sort of identify viable avenues forward for our complainant appeals work that we will then bring to the meeting that Dr. Rosenthal will be presenting at. So we can sort of, at that meeting, kind of cover what his findings were and then sort of avenues that we as a work group have identified that we can take to move forward with his work. So yeah, that's our update.
Thank you so much. Any questions or discussions on where complainant appeals is at this point? Seeing none, move right into next work group update. Is anyone from police practices present and able to provide an update?
I am here, but I don't have an update because unfortunately I wasn't able to attend the last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Tyler. We'll look forward to the December 20 meeting for an update. And again, these work group updates dovetail into my soapbox a minute ago on the co-chair updates on engaging with your communities and coming prepared to discuss how we should use our time as a commission and work groups to prioritize policy development in 2024. So good opportunity to reset, especially with adding to our policy staff. Is there anyone from the behavioral health work group here to update?
Yes, I'm here, Lynn Wilson, and we have not had a meeting for a couple of months. So I believe I've had some emails exchanges with the new policy person, Danny Sullivan, and we are going to schedule a meeting before the end of the year. We were charged with some pretty large areas to research and look at, and to be honest with you, I tried jumping into them and it was just a little overwhelming. But crisis intervention, training, protocols, and de-escalation policies, which, by the way, the Seattle de-escalation policy is a model that was used by the state AG's office for all the police departments in the state. So I'm not sure what we could even do there. And then officer wellness was another issue we looked at. And then there's also the dual dispatch program. And each one of those is just a huge undertaking. So we're going to try to focus more. And so it sounds like it'd be good to just wait until the commission itself prioritizes what policies, particularly with regard to behavioral health, that we might be able to focus on. I don't think going forward, I just think we need to focus on like one thing that might actually be, that we might actually be able to make a difference with. So we're going to have a meeting and then we'll probably give an update at the next CPC meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. And as part of those discussions on how we should make priorities for 2024, it should be an ongoing discussion, but also I encourage when work groups meet this month, make space in those meetings to have these type of talks. Because I think Commissioner Wilson's right. If we could just identify at least the top priority for each work group, that would really help focus that work group's time. So thank you for that. So that brings us to staff department updates. First on the list is the policy staff updates from the American Society of Criminology.
Yeah. Are we gonna put our presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Danny and I are going to be speaking on a conference that we both attended called the American Society of Criminology. So this conference was in Philadelphia between November 14th and November 18th. I was there for about half of it. I believe Danny was there for the full time because I was at NACOL beforehand. This conference was different than the other conferences that we had previously attended. There was a little bit more emphasis on research. It's much more academic, and different topics that we decided to focus on, or we tried to focus on, were crisis intervention, mental health services, dispatch, police practices, and just policy in general. The three, I guess, talks that we're going to talk about today are evaluation of ShotSpotter in Bakersfield, California, decriminalization of illicit substances in BC, Canada, and implications of dispatchers in the 911 system for policing. And Danny's going to start.
Yes, so I went to a presentation that was an evaluation of ShotSpotter in Bakersfield. So I thought it was pretty relevant given that City Council just passed that we're going to implement it in Seattle. So for those of you who may not know what ShotSpotter is, it's a gunshot detection technology that uses sensors to detect, locate, and alert law enforcement about gunfire incidences in real time. So there's a few purposes of the technology, but one of them is so that the police are notified about gun violence or gunshots, so that they can respond regardless of if someone calls 911. So the technology has been around for over 20 years, and it's been implemented in various cities. And as I said, Seattle just said that they're going to implement it. So essentially, the key findings for this study pointed out that, well, okay, back it up. Essentially, like there's been a few studies conducted on the effectiveness of the technology, but there hasn't been a lot of studies that focus on whether it has any impacts on reducing gun violence and increasing police response times. So that's what this study looked at. And essentially they found no significant differences from before the technology was implemented to up to 2 years after. They actually found a slight increase in gun violence after ShotSpotter was implemented, but there's no causal inference there. That doesn't mean that ShotSpotter had anything to do with it. It's just not funny, it's an interesting finding. But it does imply that ShotSpotter definitely did not play a role in decreasing gun violence in that area. So future considerations, they said they're looking to add 24 more months of additional data to see if there are more significant differences in these two variables. And then they're looking to include a public health variable, whether the implementation of the technology has any impact on public health. Yeah, so I think Jessica has the next one.
So the next one that I'm going to speak on behalf of is decriminalization of illicit substances in BC, Canada. I chose this to highlight because I think it's pretty relevant to the ordinance that was just recently passed in the city of Seattle. that was criminalizing or making a gross misdemeanor of the use and possession of controlled substances in public spaces. This was interesting because they mostly just talked about that a lot of it comes down to police training, that officers didn't have proper training to really tell the difference between different similar looking drugs, and that that they didn't have scales because the current law in place is that it has to be less than 2.5 grams for it to be considered an arrest. And officers don't really have grams to be able to tell that, so they have to eyeball it. So that was just interesting. A lot of it comes down to training for officers and providing tools. The next point that they brought up in this study is that there has to be a more robust public health infrastructure. They talked about the need for more trained professionals. They talked about the need for more facilities to help people who are looking for treatment. And without that decriminalizing different illicit substances is really challenging because there's just no other option other than arresting them and putting them in jail and going through that process. The last thing that I thought was really interesting that they highlighted is that typically drug overdoses or deaths from drugs are not from the drug itself. It's more so from the just the unpredictability of the drug market. And so there's other things that are added to whatever people are ingesting. And they just highlighted that having a state-controlled and distribution system to be able to distribute illicit substances might be able to help reduce the amount of deaths that are happening throughout BC. It's not a direct correlation to Seattle, maybe not even for Washington, but I thought that the research that they presented was really interesting.
And then I went to a presentation that focused on dispatchers. It was a session and there were a few presentations on dispatch. And since there's been increasing conversations on the impact of dispatchers in Seattle lately, figured this seemed relevant. So this one study assessed various dispatch and caller interactions and the impact of those interactions on the caller's willingness to cooperate with the police once on site. And then how the interaction with the dispatcher impacted the caller's perceived legitimacy of the police. So if they had a bad interaction with the dispatcher, if it sort of gave them a negative lens, in terms of how legitimate the police were when they got to them. And then it also looked at the ability of police officers to mitigate any impacts with the use of procedurally just tactics. So there's a lot of different sort of procedurally just tactics, essentially including, giving the civilian space to explain their side of the story, being transparent about their concern for the person's safety, basically any means of accomplishing respect for the other person is a procedure just tactic. So the findings from the study indicate that the caller's experience with the call taker significantly impacted how they interacted with the police and their perceptions of police legitimacy. So it wasn't that surprising of a finding. I didn't catch the exact percentage of how significant, but it was very high. It was in the somewhere in the 90% range. And then they also found that if the police used procedurally just tactics, that they were successfully able to mitigate the negative impacts of the caller dispatch interaction. Again, the number was really high for that as well. So practical implications of this include the importance of the adoption of procedural justice training for officers, as well as dispatchers. Essentially, they noted in the study that dispatchers, in terms of training, tend to be overlooked with procedurally just trainings and such. So yeah, I think this study essentially pointed out the importance of the dispatcher caller interaction, because they are the first interaction that citizens have with the law enforcement system a lot of the time. So they act as the gatekeepers of citizen perceptions of law enforcement. So yeah, that's that study. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about is also on dispatch, but it looked at the role of mental health professionals in the dispatch setting and whether it makes sense for them to not only be present on, in on-site responses, but also working alongside dispatch personnel in the dispatch setting to help divert calls away from law enforcement. So yeah, so these researchers pointed out that sometimes there are clear mental health concerns for those who aren't necessarily calling for mental health resources. They talked about, you know, a lot of national cases of people who, with mental health disorders or people who are abusing substances when they call multiple times a day, concerned that they're being watched or other signs of paranoia, but they're not asking the dispatcher for mental health resources. They want law enforcement to come, mitigate any perceived danger. So at that point, dispatchers' hands are tied. They can't force services onto a caller that they aren't asking for. So these types of calls often result in the unnecessary use of law enforcement. So the researchers asked the question, can and should behavioral health professionals work alongside dispatch personnel to use their skills to talk to the caller and divert them toward resources that they can actually use? And they found that doing this resulted in this study specifically in a significant amount of diversion and reducing the amount of times that law enforcement were dispatched. So essentially, yes, it did work in this case. Incorporating behavioral health professionals in the dispatch setting is a good idea. And yeah, so that's the end of our presentation. What's the next slide? I think that's it. Yes. Yeah. So obviously we aren't the ones who conducted these studies. We listened to them for 10 minutes. So we don't have every detail of information. We tried to give you high level overviews of the ones that we found to be the most relevant. But if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them. Or if you want to get in contact with the people that did the studies, yeah, we can put you in contact with them.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the procedural justice training that they're talking about? And the other one was about spot shotter.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to some communities and other cities where they did have it's been successful. So.
Okay. Yeah. So the procedural, I think in this case, I'm trying to remember which city this was in. They had developed their own training, procedural justice training, specifically for this study or specifically for their police department. So I know that there's like multiple kinds that cities use, but yeah, there's probably more of like a standardized training. But yeah, they developed this one specifically for it.
And I know that there's a problem in 911 dispatch. Locally it's been a problem for a while, and we've asked the IG to put it on the work plan since about maybe 2019, I believe. And because this was before it was pulled out of SPD though, so it's still an ongoing problem with sometimes when African Americans call, they are considered in the past they were considered maybe not as serious or they didn't get the high profile as other people would get. And Helen, who used to be a commissioner, she did the 40-hour training and came back and gave us an assessment of the dispatch. And we've still been trying to get some more information about that for a while, And now it's a new system, but it still has some situations in it here that needs to be looked at and see where the gaps are. So that kind of stuff.
Okay. Definitely. Okay.
And also, I don't think the researchers take into consideration, like the gentleman who came from Chicago, who talked about what happens to children who grew up hearing gunshots all the time, the amount of trauma that happened to them. And I think that our community has been living so much trauma until I think all researchers overlooked the trauma that young Black kids might have. Because we had a school here down in the South End. You all remember the school down there that I think it was in not too far from Henderson, elementary school that had like 70 shots one night around there. Nobody really cares about those kinds of things. Even if nobody got killed, nobody cares about the amount of lived trauma that our kids go through. And this research said that if children don't feel safe by the time they get 16 or 17, they're going to carry a gun because they don't feel safe. And so anyway, I don't think the researchers take into consideration what happens in our community, because even if the gunshots went down, it would be a benefit for young people. Because people out. I'm sure you've heard gunshots and
Drove by scene last night.
Huh?
Drove by scene last night.
Yeah. That's right. So I think that's another flaw in in any research, they overlook us because we've been people who've been marginalized and by that word, and also believe that we're used to violence, and so it's a lived experience for us where other people are not as used to it as we are. So,
Yeah,
so I think
definitely.
so that's just my own. That's
Yeah.
my biased opinion.
Yeah, that makes, so yeah, I will point out that, I kind of brushed past it, but they mentioned including a mental, a public health variable in like future studies, which I feel like maybe that's like what they're like a mental health and public health variable, like how did implementing ShotSpotter impact, yeah, like the mental health and the health components of people in the area. So I have a feeling maybe they're like thinking that too, like we need to, because this one just looked at, did it reduce gun violence? Because there's large gang activity in Bakersfield. So they really wanted to focus on sort of like gang related activities and whether that reduced. So yeah, they didn't look at the mental health or public health.
And even if they said model up, that means it's going to specifically look for our situation, because again, the common reality, the common thinking here is that we're used to it. I mean, this is how we behave.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, if it was happening in another community, then it would be out of the norm.
Sure.
But for us, it's supposed to be a norm, since we've had gangs in the community. How many years now? I mean, and in our nation, we've had gangs about 30 years now, 40 years. I mean,
Just in Seattle?
no, I mean in the nation. I mean, because you know they came from Los Angeles. Yeah, so I mean, and then Chicago had them. So if you've lived with this for 30 years, which is a generation, then it becomes it's
Yeah.
become normalized, and people think it's still this is what you lived it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 3 years is really nice. And this one.
Yeah. So, anyway.
For sure. Yeah,
They-
definitely not a one size fits all.
Yeah, and then that's why I think that we have to do some kind of research and
Yeah.
and poll people themselves about how the children feel when they hit a gunshot, you know.
Yeah. I think, yeah, looking at specifically what we want to accomplish by implementing ShotSpotter, like
Yeah.
Seattle, in the context of Seattle. So
Yeah.
like,
and then
over the
it's just a pilot here.
yeah.
I mean, so you know, it's just for us to see if it works or not.
Right.
You know, yeah, and that kind of stuff. So
Right.
thank you, though. I think
Yeah.
both of you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we get to Jessica, or you two would like to share some information about what an event that she attended. So.
Yes, this Sunday I was at the event at the Filipino Community Center. 200 plus people showed up, and there was kids and youth. It was holiday celebration at a resource table. So CPC was there. We had a table, give out our brochure and give out Know Your Right trainings. On the top of that, I've met former co-chair of CPC who helped me to translate the Filipino language. Her name is Emma.
Yeah, Emma.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you need commissioners to help you staff a table, let us know. I'd be delighted to help staff the table.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Jessica.
Yeah, for the legislative update, things are starting to pick up a little bit. On Friday, December 1st, I attended the WCPA meeting. They just pretty much talk about the 3 legislative priorities, or the 3 bills that we're still focusing on from last year, which are HB 1579, HB 1513, and HB 1445. Those are mostly the topics of conversation. The bills have also started to drop from Olympia, and most of them are, what I've seen since yesterday, are not super relevant to our work, and so I'm just keeping an eye out to see if there are any new bills that are going to be dropped or introduced. So going through the list of the different 3 priority bills that were discussed in that meeting, for HB 1579, they're still building support for that. It sounds like they were talking about trying to move the needle from a complete no to something a little bit more neutral. So they're still talking and building support around that bill. And that one is titled Establishing a Mechanism for Independent Prosecution within the Attorney General's Office of Criminal Conduct from Police Use of Force. The next bill is HB 1513. There's been a lot of discussion around this one. ACLU has also been hosting different work group meetings that I've been attending or trying to attend, and they've just been talking about how to move that bill forward as well, from just a policy standpoint and a community engagement standpoint, and also meeting different legislators and people to help move that bill forward. This is titled the Traffic Safety for All, or kind of called the Traffic Safety for All bill. This one specifically is talking about stopping police from pulling over individuals for non-moving vehicles. There's more nuance to that, but that's kind of the general gist. There's, again, still building support for this, answering any questions, and the ACLU also has a one-pager on their website for this if anybody wants to gain more understanding of what this bill entails. They're still answering a lot of questions. There's a lot of details about that, and if anybody has any questions, I can speak to that a little bit more. Last bill that I'll highlight is HB 1445. The conversation from that meeting started talking about titling this as the Civil Rights Bill and shifting that focus a little bit more. This one also includes the AG, so I think 1579 and 1445 often get confused. They deal similar enough with different same types of stuff. This one's titled Concerning Law Enforcement and Local Correction to Agency Misconduct Through Investigation and Legal Action. There is a letter to support these bills, both on the organization side and the individuals, that can be found on the ACLU's website. And if you'd like me to share that, I'm not sure how easy it is to find on the website, but I do have a direct link to both of those. Other than that, Wyatt is having us, that's the lobbyist that the CPC has hired for this legislative session. He is getting us meetings with different senators and House members. Next Wednesday, we have a meeting with Senator Nguyen, and then we also have different meetings with other. They're still pending, but he's working on meetings with 2 other House members, I think maybe 1 other senator. And so that's the build up for that. I know that this time of year is really busy, and that's kind of where our status is right now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one question. The ACLU, I mean, my understanding is there's the 2 initiatives trying to get on the ballot to kind of roll back what's happening, and I thought the ACLU was maybe asking people not to sign those 2 initiatives. I don't know what they're about, but I just heard that I guess people are organizing to try to roll back some of the gains that was won in 2020.
So I'm not familiar with that, but I can look into it.
Okay.
I think one of them is police pursuits.
Oh, police pursuits. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, for all your work on the ledge side for the updates. Unless there's any questions, I'm not seeing any. Go ahead and move into department updates. First is City Council. I see Mr. Aldridge is here, so I'll go ahead and ask if there's any City Council updates.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair Merkel. I just wanted to note that, as mentioned earlier, the council did vote to approve the appointment of Director Ellis as Director of the Community Police Commission and adopted the 2024 budget in late November. The Public Safety and Human Services Committee will hold its final meeting on Tuesday the 12th at 9:30 a.m. to hear an update on the LEAD program. Diversion is an important part of the public use possession bill proposed by the mayor and adopted by the council. So this is going to be the first council update since that legislation went into effect. And Councilor Herbold's term ends in December. She did not pursue election as a council member. The final city council meeting for this year will be the afternoon of December 12th at 2 p.m. And next year, the new council will select a president, adopt a committee structure, and a work program. Those committees, for anyone who hasn't been through this cycle, are established for 2 years. And new committees often have slightly different names. And the new council will face a unique challenge in that they're going to have to appoint a new member with the departure of Councilmember Mosqueda being elected to the King County Council member. So their January is going to be very busy. And just in closing, Councilmember Herbold wanted to express appreciation and thanks to everyone at the Community Police Commission for all the work you do. It can be very challenging and time consuming, but it is very important work. So thank you.
Thank you, Newell. And thank you for everything Councilmember Herbold has done and worked on over the years with respect to the CPC, and particularly in the last year and a half that this set of co-chairs have been able to work with. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Newell. You've been a really great staff person to work with as well. And thank you for all the work that you've done.
Thank you very much.
That takes us to the mayor's office. Is there anyone from the mayor's office to provide an update? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the monitoring team. I see Mr. Ward is present. Good morning, Mr. Ward.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the CPC. There's no report from the monitoring team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. That brings us to DOJ. I think I saw Matt Waldrop present. Or Mr. Waldrop, is there any update from DOJ?
Hey, good morning, everyone. No update from the Department of Justice. Thanks.
Thank you. OPA, is anyone OPA for an update? Seeing none, move on to Office of Inspector General, OIG. Is anyone from OIG present to provide an update?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Matthias here with OIG. I would like to say congratulations to Dr. Ellis as well for the appointment, and also how exciting it is for the new positions that you're getting as well. I think that's really great that those are being approved, so that's good. Real quick update for us, office-wide, the entire office is working on the 2024 work plan, getting that moving ahead. Audits and policy are both in the process of finalizing reports before the end of the year. Standards and compliance is still doing interviews and working on the FRB assessment. On the investigation side, we are ready, I think, to release our Q3 review of OPA classifications. I think that should be out next week. Other than that, it's all the usual very busy end of year stuff. So thanks.
Thank you, Matthias. And I know you guys are very busy over there. Just as a quick reminder, under the ordinance, the CPC provides input into the OIG work plan, and we are very eager to have OIG come and present when you're able to, hopefully early next year at the latest, about kind of where things are at with respect to how 2022 or even especially 2023 went with respect to the CPC recommendations to the OIG work plan. We'd really love to hear a report on that. So appreciate all the work you guys are doing, and we look forward to being able to schedule that kind of report.
Absolutely, I will pass that on. Thanks.
That brings us to SPD. I see several friends from SPD here, so let's see if there's an update from SPD.
Hi, Brian Maxey, Chief Operating Officer. On behalf of SPD, we too want to congratulate Dr. Ellis for her appointment. It's been a long time coming, and look forward to working with you in the CPC in 2024. Our main report for today is about the transmission of the crowd management policies pursuant to the court order. We are required to draft policies consistent with the less lethal ordinance that was passed several years ago. We have done that. Those will be transmitted to the monitoring team and DOJ for consideration today. We certainly will be engaging with them. I think it will come as no surprise to this group that SPD does not support this version of the policies. We have, in collaboration with the Office of the Inspector General and through the Sentinel event process, developed policies that have been working very well for the last 2 years, where we have had no use of force during crowd management events, even during some rather heated demonstrations, primarily around the Dobbs decision on abortion and the Palestine-Israel conflicts. And those have been managed with no use of force and very few issues. We're very proud of our policies and what we've created, and we would like to see those continued and approved again by the court. They were previously approved in 2021, and we've modified them since then. As part of that submission to the monitoring team and DOJ, we are also including language about how to better deal with reporting of force during long sustained crowd management events. And our solution to this is actually to embed either an administrative lieutenant or a force investigation team supervisor into the Seattle Police Operations Center to monitor and track force in real-time tag video and ensure that we are able to recreate what happened after the fact so that we can thoroughly investigate and find lessons learned from that. Other than that, I'm very, very pleased that the CPC asked Dr. Jamila Cage and Lieutenant Brandon James to report on our relational policing efforts here today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey. And that is a very good segue. Thank you. That brings us to part of our agenda with the presentation on SPD relational policing from Dr. Jamila Cage and Lieutenant Brandon James. I think I see both of them present. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to them to begin the presentation. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having us, and to CPC, thank you for having us here. Dr. Ellis, we have met on several occasions. Have you presented for us at Before the Badge, and congratulations on your appointment. Look forward to working with you and your team. Dr. Cage and I do have a presentation. I think, Dr. Cage, are you going to be able to do a screen share?
Can everyone see?
We can see you.
Oh.
I can't see your screen.
You look nice.
Interesting. Okay. It says I'm sharing. Okay.
Now we can. We can see something.
Okay.
Not the presentation yet.
I can see an agenda for. Oh, there. Well, okay. Looks like you're making progress.
Yeah, it's coming again. All right, now can you see?
Oh yeah. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So relational policing, Dr. Cage and I came into our role this summer, where Dr. Cage came from juvenile detention for a 20+ year career and all kind of roles over at King County Juvenile Detention, and her experience has been wonderful, and really recently obtained her doctorate. So we're super excited to have her as a part of the team. And then also on the team, of course, myself there, I run the Before the Badge program within the relational policing. I have the community service officers and the mounted unit, which I'll briefly touch on as well. There's another lieutenant who runs another side of relational policing, and that is Lieutenant Oscar Gardia, and he has the community outreach officers and the crime prevention coordinators. So most people are familiar with like Detective Cookie and maybe even Officer Aaron Lucas. Oscar Gardia oversees those folks. And then, Dr. Cage is a strategic advisor for the team, and then supported by Kahila Washington, our administrative staff analyst. So what is relational policing? So I'm sure everyone, understands that community policing and all those different terminologies. Recently SPD had the Collaborative Policing Bureau, and through some strategic changes, we did close the Collaborative Policing Bureau and created the Relational Policing Innovation Team, or just the Relational Policing Unit. And what this is all about is just continuing to drive building relationships with community. And, like I mentioned, officers like Aaron Lucas, if you guys are familiar, he's pretty well known in the community. He's known to give haircuts to kids while engaging in the community. Detective Cookie, there's been a small handful of very specific officers who just really focused on building relationships and engaging with the community on various levels. But we wanted to expand that throughout the police department and not just rely on a small group of officers within one unit, that you really go out and just do the community-based building relationships. We want to really infuse that within the department. So Dr. Cage and I been working on this. And one of the things that we're doing is really ensuring that this is starts with our new recruits. We're going to talk about Before the Badge here in a moment, but the Before the Badge program is a 45-day program where new recruits come in, and they are interfacing with all kind of intersections of the community. We'll talk about those in a minute. But we're really doing that. And the purpose behind that is we feel very strong that these recruits that are coming to Seattle PD, need to have a really good understanding of the communities that they are going to serve. Oftentimes, they don't look like those communities. They don't have the same beliefs of maybe as some of those communities. And I think it's really important. And I've seen in my 24 years with SPD that if we can humanize, the relationships and the interactions that we have with each other, and treat people as people and rather than objects, we have a much better outcome when it comes to building those relationships. Not having significant force in certain situations, and overall, the police and the community come out of particular interactions in more positive outcomes. They come out of those situations with a positive feeling. So, of course, we have the Before the Badge program. It's been going on for about a year and a half, and one of the things that we notice is it's great to have these young officers or brand new officers going through and meeting all these communities, but what happens to our law enforcement officers downstream after that training? Or the other thing we identified is, what about the officers that have been on the department for a number of years who have not been introduced to these sectors of the community? And so not only are we doing Before the Badge program is brand new, but now we're looking at to bring it throughout the department, starting with the next touch point of where the recruits go after the police academy is the field training officers, or we call FTOs. And so we will be bringing the FTOs in through sections of Before the Badge, and those meetings and interactions that we're having with those communities. And then from there, we are going to be doing the rest of the department. So the relational policing unit was its own standalone unit. And then, over the course of just in the past few months, working with Mr. Maxey and Chief Diaz, we recognized if we really want to infuse this to the rest of the department, it has to be a part of what we do and what we train. And so the relational policing unit was moved up underneath the educational training section, or essentially the training unit. So, we could infuse this in all sectors of our training. So field training officer school, sergeant school, some of our other touch points with our in-service training are going to have presentations on, how does this training that you're getting, how does that intersect with relational policing and how we interact with the community and understand each other better to have those positive outcomes. Go ahead, Dr. Gage.
Okay, so relational policing and our approach, what does that look like? And so for us, that's bridging the gap between the community and the Seattle Police Department. And again, that's with continuous relationship building. And relational policing seeks ultimately to build trust between the community and the police department. And the new Before the Badge program initiates that first step. And that's that first step towards building trust with introducing the new recruits to various diverse communities as part of their introduction to the department. And some of those communities are, as you can see, they interact with the Chinatown International District. We do a Filipino community meeting. There's a Latino and a Latinx community meeting. We take them on a Black-owned business tour. They have Indigenous history. There's an East African community meeting, LGBTQ plus community meeting. There's a Middle Eastern community meeting. They're taken to the King County Juvenile Detention Center to meet with the youth, and also Rainier Beach High School to get some feedback from those youth as well. And that's some very interesting feedback that those youth have. And again, it's all about building that trust and feedback from the community. And ultimately, it teaches the officers up front the significance of developing these relationships and from individual members of the community, as well as businesses and governmental institutions at the same time.
And I would add to that, not currently on that list, is that we team with Dr. Jackie Helfgott from Seattle University. And currently the recruits are on regular MCPP, or micro community policing plan, Monday evening meetings. And so the recruits are getting an introduction to the community that way as well, but also hearing, how the community will like the police to better serve their specific community. And that is coupled with, earlier in that day, they go on ride-alongs in that precinct and then have that engagement in the evening time online. And then finally, besides all of the intersection of community, we have Dr. David Lewis from University of Washington, who is with our students, or our recruits for 4 hours each week, and really talking about the psychology of law enforcement, psychology of interacting with others, including self-psychology. How do I show up in a positive manner? How do I show up and to make sure that, when I'm interacting with someone, if we on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no stress at all, 10 being the highest level of stress, making sure that we understand what we need to do as particularly young police officers, not to show up on a call at a 10. And if we do show up on a call at that high level of stress, we also know that people that we're interfacing with from any one of these communities or several of these communities may also have some generational trauma with police, may have concerns about interacting with the police. And if both sides are interacting with each other at that high level stress 10, or even we can say 7 and higher, the problems that can face. And so Dr. Lewis does a really good job talking about the psychology and the human brain and why we do the things we do and how to be better with that. So a lot of psychology going in with that relational aspect. Go ahead, next slide. Some of the other components besides the Before the Badge program is our community outreach, our Police Activities League, or also known as CPAL. And this is a photo of Officer Trey Smith in one of the many activities, events that we team with community centers and arrange to have real positive interactions with the kids, particularly. And one of the, we don't have school officers, right? We understand that. And so instead of actually having our officers like Officer Smith or Sergeant Roberson or Officer Aaron Lucas inside the schools, we are still doing school engagement, not necessarily, the 8 to 4 inside the school, but during after school programs and late nights at community centers and these CPAL or, police activities leagues that you see there. In addition to that, we also have our Police Explorer program. One of the other programs we have within relational policing is our crime prevention coordinators. We have several of those. Each precinct has their own, and they're working on, crime prevention through environmental design, the wheel lock programs, making sure that folks that have Hyundais and Kias for certain have a wheel lock to make sure their vehicle isn't stolen. They're also involved in the drug takebacks and block watch programs. Next slide.
So 360 approach, when we talk about relational policing, the 360 approach is a full circle, 360. And so when we look at that, Lieutenant James and I sat down and said, okay, how can we, like he previously stated, how can we get this information disseminated to everyone within the department, because it was so valuable that we couldn't just keep it in the front with Before the Badge. And so we looked at how we can get this information from initially at Before the Badge all the way through to the patrol officers. And so once our officers leave, the recruits leave Before the Badge, they go to the Criminal Justice Academy. And so once they leave the academy, they come back and they're with field training officers. And so when they're with the field training officers, it's important that they're speaking the same language. And so what we felt is that they're the first group that should have this information that the recruits are getting in the Before the Badge program. So what we're working on now is identifying what we feel are the best courses of information that is given in the Before the Badge program to be provided for the field training officers. And so those courses will be provided to the field training officers and then weave throughout the entire department. And we look at that as a 360 approach, because then everyone will have this information, and then everyone will be able to have this relational policing approach and understand the importance of building the relationships in the community. And so weaving this unique program through the department will strengthen relationships within not only Seattle Police Department, but also the community. And as Lieutenant James also previously stated, that relational policing is currently part of the education and training section, and that is furthering the department integration of this program. And again, you know, I come from the community, so I believe that it's really important that these relationships are happening, because firsthand, I've experienced where I believe that the police should be in the community, should have relationships, and it's different. Relational policing is different from community policing. To me, community policing is more so to just solve a problem. Relational policing is ongoing efforts to build relationships, to build trust, and just to continue to work towards positive relationships and to change the negative connotations that are put onto the police department, change the mindset, right? Continue to allow the community to see the good work that the police want to do, and give officers a chance to listen continuously to what the community has to say about the department.
Yeah, let me give an example of this in how we see and how we're doing this, and really how we foresee taking the before the badge interactions and engagements and weaving that in with the rest of the department. One of the communities that we didn't specifically list on there that we are engaging with on a monthly basis with before the badge is the IF project, the formerly incarcerated females. And we team also with that with what we call the collective and through the WELD program. And if you're not familiar with that, those are also formerly incarcerated members integrating back into society. And, you know, we've had some amazing interactions with these formerly incarcerated folks. Now, the police recruits, you know, they're brand new. I mean, they haven't gone through the police academy yet. So they may not have this negative, you know, feeling or connotation about a formerly incarcerated individual. But certainly, police officers who have been on the job for a while are going to have some sort of feeling about formerly incarcerated folks. It just, you know, after a number of years of dealing with individuals, you know, and as from a police officer perspective, you know, it's not uncommon to have a negative connotation to formerly incarcerated individuals. And so this is an opportunity for us to bring in not only the before the badge recruits, but also field trained officers and other, you know, veteran SPD officers to, you know, in a controlled, neutral, safe environment to have open dialogue and discussion with the ladies from the IF project and the men from the collective who have been impacted not only by police, but also by the criminal justice system, and for not only the recruits, but veteran police officers to understand what it is, you know, the impact of going through the justice system, and, you know, and how we can, you know, leave some sort of potential positive impact. Now, we're not asking police recruits or police officers to not engage in effective law enforcement and enforcement through arrest. That's just going to have to occur. But as we are doing that, if we can treat people once again as humans rather than objects, and realize that when, you know, people do make mistakes, and the police do have to come in and enforce those mistakes at times, but we can still treat people as humans while doing that. And this is just a good example, particularly, you know, the men in this group, and many of them were serving 20 plus years in state and federal prison for some pretty rough crimes. And for them to come back and engage with the police department in a very positive manner, to give back, to say, hey, listen, you know, what I did is what I did years ago. I'm a different person now. Now I want to, you know, give back to not only the community to try to prevent our youth from walking down those paths, but also impacting our young police officers and existing police officers of, you know, when you are dealing with someone in that manner, how can we have a humanized approach to that? So that's just one of many examples of how this is working. Now, personally, I started as a patrol officer in the East Precinct, Capitol Hill, Broadway area. And that was back in 1999, 2000s. And I was raised in White Center, Berrien area. I went off to the military and then came back to Seattle to serve. And although I am not a member of the LGBTQ community, I've always considered myself an ally. But I recall being a brand new police officer, 23 years old, out on the streets of Broadway, and it was a little bit of a culture shock, quite frankly. I didn't know what to expect, and the LGBTQ plus community, and I was working at night, so you had the neighbors clubs and all the other nightlife going on. I was like, whoa, this is interesting. I've never seen any of that. And then, how do we interface with them? What do we say? What do we not say? How do we not offend someone? And all those things. Now, fast forwarding to just several months ago, I went through the presentation that we provide in a engagement with the LGBTQ plus community, a community member, a transgender community member. Many may know Mac McGregor. Also, Officer Dorian Corio provide this really great presentation on the LGBTQ plus community about history, particularly when it comes to transgender interaction and how do we refer to people, how do we say things, and the issue of dead names and all of that. And I walked out of that 20 something years after starting my law enforcement career. I was like, oh my goodness, I've always considered myself an ally, but this is information I wish I would have had 20 years ago as I was engaging with members of that community on a regular basis. Not to say that I had any negative opinions or feelings, but could I have served better because I had this kind of information? And I believe, and we believe, that that is the case. Next slide.
Okay, so our relational policing timeline and work plan. So by the end of next year, December 2024, our goal is to improve and standardize the Before the Badge training program, which is looking at curriculum, making sure that it's where we want it to be at the end of the day. And, sorry, how that went back there. So making sure curriculum is where we want it and enhancing it in every area. Identify and implement a trauma-informed policing plan by the end of next year. And then by the end of December 2025, infuse relational policing practices throughout the department and develop partnerships with local companies of all sizes to foster community. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I was just curious, you had the list of the diverse community groups that you engage with, and I was just curious, how do you identify the various communities to engage with, and do you have individual meetings with each group?
Yes, we have individual meetings. Yep. Sure, go ahead and pull it back up.
Yeah, okay.
Sure, go ahead and pull it back up as we talk about that. So these are communities that we feel that either have been marginalized, have maybe ongoing negative perceptions of police. And so it's just identifying those communities. Is there more that we could do? Sure, absolutely think so. And that's what Dr. Cage was talking about is, we're the ongoing developing the curriculum and reaching out to communities to identify what it is exactly that we should be giving to our recruits. So it's the individual meetings and individual engagements. How's that come about has been through some of the relational, the relations that we've had with sectors of this community. Like, for instance, the Filipino Community Center down on ML King. We use that community center and that community for that meeting. Carmen Martinez for the Latino and Latinx community in South Park and that tour of South Park, Black owned business tour. One of the business owners is someone I went to high school with, and so we go to her business. And so it's just folks that we've had relationships with that are also very much engaged in wanting to see this
Did he
relationship
freeze
between
up?
police.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead,
Um,
Commissioner Wilson.
Okay, thank you. So I'm curious as to whether or not you consider the homeless community part of this. My understanding is now that the support systems and the eviction moratorium has been lifted, that we're going to end up with probably a fire hose of increased homelessness in this area because the landlords are aggressively pursuing evictions to the tune of like 600 a month in King County Superior Court. And something like half of the homeless community is from the minority communities. And I don't see them listed. Is that, and I'm assuming the police interact with him quite a bit. And I'm just curious as to whether your list could be expanded to include the homeless community, which apparently is not going to get smaller, it's going to get bigger. So that's my question.
That's a great question and a great point. And absolutely, like I just mentioned, this list could grow for certain. The homeless community is a section that we have talked extensively about how to have that engagement, and it has to be a monthly positive engagement, and where do we go from there? I will say that currently what I've been using for this is the LEAD program and Johnny within LEAD. And he's been helping the recruits understand the impact of not only what LEAD does, but also, being someone who has been unhoused, struggling with addiction and what that means. Now, I do believe that there is an opportunity to have an engagement with just, a service provider regarding the unhoused. And that is one area that I would like to see us expand. But once again, it does have to be an organization that's willing to work with the police department, willing to have ongoing and monthly engagements, and just trying to find that right service provider and right individual or individuals that are willing to provide that sort of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know Reverend Walden has a question. I do too, but I'll go ahead for Reverend Walden.
Well, excuse me, thank you so much. I don't have a question more than just a comment because I've been involved with Before the Badge from the inception. I'm presenting when Vicky Beach is also there, so I'm one of the community people. And I thought it was I really do think that it's a good program. I mean, because it does humanize officers, especially officers. I mean, recruits who might be coming from other areas who don't have a lot of experience around people who don't look like them in situations that they've never been involved in. And I think that that's always been one of the flaws of policing is that communities are being policed by people who've never had any experience with them and also bring their lifetime biases to policing. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And eventually, I believe that the culture in Seattle will improve, but in the meantime, we still have to work on the culture this here now and how we're going to do something about that. But I personally think it's, I personally think it's a good program.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. Appreciate those comments.
And my question is actually kind of on point to the comments Reverend Walden just made. And I applaud the program. I note I was paying quite close attention to the presentation related to expanding the program from Before the Badge to the rest of the department and the timeline for doing so. And I just, I guess one point and then a question on that point is that this program and the work that you're doing intersects with some of the major issues that impact the community and that the CPC has been working on, most notably SPD culture. and some of the issues that the CPC has identified with respect to SPD culture. And I'm not asking to dive into any of those issues right now, but my question is, because those are such important issues for the community and for the CPC, and because as even Officer Mullins has mentioned in prior CPC meetings, when big things happen, it impacts patrol officers' interactions with people in the public. So that's kind of a lead up to my question of, is there a metric by which SPD is going to be measuring the program, measuring the success of the program, and any kind of changes, small and big, with respect to public interaction as a result of this program development?
Okay, Dr. Cage was having some computer issues, so she joined in my office, and she will field that question for you.
So yes, Seattle University is actually doing a study on the Before the Batch program. They're doing a longitudinal study on it, a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year study. So what they're doing is they're interviewing the recruits the Thursday before they start the program, and then they're following up with them at the end of the academy, and then at their 1 year, 3 year, 5 year mark, and they're reporting out to us.
Yeah, Officer Mullins, thank you.
Yes, I don't know about college studies or anything like that, but my connection with Beyond the Badge has been some of the recruits coming out to ride along with me. And I have to say that my interaction with them and them riding along with me has been wonderful. And we have a lot of great officers in the South End that will give them their first good example of a street officer. And the fact that we're not policing by arresting, we're policing by contacting people and having positive connections with them. I'm lucky enough to be able to work MP3, and some of your recruits have come through, and they're left with, well, you talk to people all day. Well, everybody likes you. What I thought people would not like you. And I go, hey, it's all a matter of that step into the community, like your first step is going to be positive. People will continue to be positive with you if you're a positive. Yes, sometimes you do have to arrest people, but even then you can be respectful. And I think it's a great way to introduce people to police work and have them go in the right direction from the beginning. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate those comments, Officer Mullins. I've known Officer Mullins for my entire career, and when you talk about culture, it's a culture that a veteran officer like Officer Mullins provides to our younger officers, and that example that we can get out of our police cars and have positive interactions and conversations with people on a regular basis. That's just what we do. Mark has been in the South End for more than 3 decades, and there's not anyone in the South End who has been down there half that time that doesn't know Officer Mullins and Officer Johnson and all the many other officers that really embody what we're talking about is building relationships. Now, I had mentioned specific officers who were assigned to the community outreach, but really it's the police officers like Officer Mullins, the patrol officer, who is going to have that impact. And this is what we're driving. We're driving relational policing through all of the department. So all of our police officers, like Officer Mullins and many others, feel comfortable just having these positive interactions and engagements, and it shouldn't not taking someone decades of experience like Officer Mullins to do that. Rather, we're doing it right away from when the time they start with this police department.
Thank you, Lieutenant James, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you. I'm very proud of you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. We have a question from staff, but I just want to quickly uplift Officer Mullins. I've had numerous conversations with him that just indicate to me how deeply invested in the community and the people in the community he's working in. So thank you, Lieutenant James, for recognizing that, and Officer Mullins for the work you do. Margita, you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a question, but before I go to my question, I took this training when I was a CSO. It's very helpful, but the only people who are there is the new recruits. And I wanted to see more the street officers who is already working in the community to take this training. I don't know if it's you involving that now, but I took it a year ago. And I really wanted to see the officers who is already working in the community to go through this training.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Dr. Cage and I are talking about is the Before the Badge program is great. It's required for the new recruits, but now developing strategies to get this throughout the police department. So thank you for that comment. Appreciate that. Any other questions?
Would it have to be bargained before you can implement it?
I do not believe that this is a bargaining issue. This is just department training. So the department can develop training programs. We can develop, particularly when it comes to a volunteer training program. But we really believe, based on our feedback from the field training officers, the FTOs, who are vested in interested in the Before the Badge program because the new recruits are coming out talking about it, and now the FTOs are saying, well, what is going on Before the Badge? What are you guys teaching? I want to know more about it. I want to get involved. I want to present. I want to go to these community meetings. And we believe that our gateway through the rest of the police department, through that positive interaction and really the buy-in, is through the FTOs. FTOs are oftentimes, the more, respected officers, and so this is an opportunity to use the FTOs and other veteran officers like Mullins. I don't think Officer Mullins is an FTO anymore, but use FTOs and veteran officers like Mullins to get this buy-in about this. So we are still developing that strategy. Great question. About if this is a bargaining issue. I do not believe that this is a bargaining issue. This is just going to be department training that we are either offering or mandating it at some point.
I think it's a good idea because when you look at it, we the public pay, the citizens pay the police wages. They absolutely do work for us, and this is what we've always said. They work for us because we pay their wages. They don't get paid on a government grant. That they get paid from the taxpayers of Seattle, and I think that this is a good step because they are employees. They don't want to think that way. I mean, I'm sure the guilds don't think that way, but we the people in Seattle do pay the wages of the and that budget that the mayor signed the other day. Those are funds that comes out of the pockets of residents of Seattle and property owners of Seattle, and so that way we have a vested interest in policing and accountability because they absolutely do work for us, and we've been saying that for 33 years. They work for us. They're not volunteers. We have no volunteer police officers in the state of Washington, just firemen, but no volunteer police officers. So I think it's a good program. They do work for us. Yeah.
Any other questions about Before the Badge or relational policing or culture or anything else I can help answer? Well, thank you very much for allowing Dr. Cage and I to present this information. If you think of something in the future and have ideas or the comment about the unhoused population, particularly if you want to introduce Dr. Cage and I to organizers or social services providers that would like to engage or at least have a conversation about this potential engagement, we are 100% willing to have those conversations and develop those relationships.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you both, and we do look forward to continuing the conversation. These, like I said, in my question, it intersects with the number of issues that the CPC has and will continue to work on. And we look forward to continuing to hear from you and work with you in the new year. So thank you for being here. This does bring us to the end of the agenda. I want to thank everyone for showing up today and for engaging and for your questions, and have a safe couple weeks, and we'll see everyone back at the next meeting on December 20. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.